Welcome everybody to another episode of Thrive Again, your relationship podcast. We're recording this from our very new office space, which is very exciting. And how are you going today?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, it is nice. It's good to have the office set up on our land for our local couples and, you know, the individuals that come in and do some work with us as well. So yeah, it's beautiful. It's a whole brand new beginning, and we've basically got it set up. So we do want to add some more things to it, like a big front deck, and you know, we're just going to take it one step at a time though.
Just like you like it, one step at a time, no rushing or anything.
Well, you got to go with the flow sometimes. You can't always be so rigid and structured. So
I wonder if our audience picks up on that, the difference between you and I. Anyway, that's for another topic, maybe.
They can make up their own story about us, can't they?
They can.
Well, we're going to reveal a bit about us today, but we're also have designed, we've put together this episode because we thought it was really important to have a balanced view on your relationships, that's plural, as a whole, with other people. And sometimes when we're in a romantic relationship, we just forget other areas of relationships that are super important for our happiness and our wellness.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we focus predominantly on romantic relationships. So, you know, I guess that's where our energy comes, but understanding the importance of nurturing all relationships to make sure that your romantic relationship is the best it can be is also just as important. So that's why we thought this topic was a good one for you guys to just reflect on, and also to maybe challenge some of the audience, because if you're anything like us, then we're neglecting some of our relationships. And I think for us, connection is really important in human beings in general. It's one of the most important things that we can do, is connect with another person, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship. So we wanted to speak into that today and dive into that a little bit more, into what that actually means. Well, what are we talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just before we jump into the episode, I just wanted to say thanks again to all the comments and the people that have been just really into our Facebook group, which is Thriving Relationships. And it's a private group. If you're not part of it, make sure you get on Facebook to Michael and Amy, or Instagram, and give us a follow, and then send us a message and we can add you into the group, because we just share some really invaluable wisdom and tips in there, and also just experiences that we have with our current clients. So, you know, we are just looking to help people in different areas, whether it be free content, all the way up to working intimately with us over even a 3-month period, so maybe even longer. So let's get into the episode. And this episode is highlighting some areas in your relationships that maybe you're neglecting. So I think for me, I was making these assumptions about being in a committed relationship for a long time. And that assumption was that once I'm married and we've got kids and we're a family unit, that I just need to really nurture the relationships within that ecosystem. And I was wrong, you know, because there were other areas where I was neglecting, and areas where both of us were and still continue to be challenged with. And, you know, Jay Shetty, if anyone has heard some of his work and maybe read some of his books, he speaks about this, and we found it to be really pertinent in our life. And I think that sometimes when we're feeling like there's a disconnect or disharmony in ourselves, we can have a look outwards at our relationships and the quality of them currently. And I would say that you will nail at least one area where you've been neglecting, or where there's just been a bit of friction. Yeah. Cool. So there actually was a study that was done from, it was the Harvard study of adult development. And they've established a really strong correlation between deep relationships and our happiness and well-being. So the question is, how does a person nurture these deep relationships? because we need to face it, that there's this loneliness epidemic that's happening in the world. And even though you might be in a relationship, like you might be, with a partner, maybe you've even got a family, loneliness can still exist. We can still feel isolated, right? So genuine connection means feeling seen, heard, and valued, and it means making others feel the same way. So it's reciprocal. Surprisingly, more than half of Aussies feel lonely, and many don't think that their relationships are even meaningful. Only 59% admit to having a best friend, and 12% have no friends. Moreover, 57% eat all their meals alone. Isn't that crazy to think?
Yeah, it is crazy to think, but I guess we're a product of our society, right? We're a product of what our life is becoming. Our phones are taking over, the TVs are taking over. I'm sure in amongst that 57% who are eating alone are probably eating in front of some type of screen, whether it's watching a movie or there's families out there that put on a TV show and the kid eats in front of the TV show because it keeps them distracted, and that's their choice. I'm not knocking that, but I guess that's where this epidemic of loneliness and isolation comes from. Even if you're in a family or with others, it's that your own world. You're trapped into your own little dimension of your reality.
Isn't that so true? And it's really probably one of the scariest thoughts that I ever have anymore, is how isolated we're becoming, yet we feel like we get these short moments of connection when we're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. We're feeling like we're connecting with somebody else's experience, but at the same time, our partner's sitting 2 meters away and they're in their own world of connection at a micro level, but on a macro level, we're bloody lonely, we're isolated, we don't know how to talk to each other anymore, and we forget all the ways in which we used to connect as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not surprised by those statistics on the isolation epidemic, because unfortunately social media and society is starting to program and condition us in that way. So it's important to start looking at this dynamic in your relationship to see how much energy and attention are you putting into making an effort into different areas of your life and with different people. So that's what we're going to talk about, is the different areas, I guess, of where we can get better at balancing our time and our relationships.
All right. So we'll kick it off, and I've got to start with an analogy because I think it just helps to get a little bit of a visual and gets you thinking a little laterally. But I do like gardening, and this is an area that I have been neglecting in my life. If you like having a relationship to the earth, which I do. So let's just imagine you've got a garden, and you've got a herb garden, and you've got fruit trees, and you've got a vegetable garden, and then you've got yourself. And so in order for the herb garden, the fruit trees, and the veggie garden to flourish and to thrive, you kind of need to look after yourself, because you're the one who cares for them. It's kind of like the analogy with the oxygen mask. In order to help somebody else, you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself. So when it comes to nurturing your friendships, and your connections and deeper connections with other human beings, the very first thing that I would say, or the most important relationship that we can have, is the relationship with ourselves. And so let's just start with these categories, and we're going to start with the relationship with self. So what do you think about that? Is that something that you prioritize? Is your relationship to yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I learned that lesson as a new mum, because for many years I wasn't nurturing the relationship with myself, and I fell into the trap that everything else was more important than me. And then I created a belief that that was the truth, that everything else was more important than me. So the house, the kids, everything else came first, obviously leaving my cup completely empty and feeling sorry for myself ultimately. It's like, poor me, you know, here I am doing everything, but no one loves me. So to empower myself, I needed to change that, and I needed to kind of understand the importance of self-care and doing something just for me, to spend time with me and the things that I love to do.
Yeah. And I remember when you started to do that, I actually sometimes felt a bit of resentment, which just adds to the whole dynamic of when you're in a romantic relationship. Because if you're looking after yourself and you're doing your own thing, then does that mean that you don't need me as much? It's also some jealousy comes into it. But I think overall, once I started to provide time and allocate time just for me, this started probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and I really started to dedicate time to me. My thoughts about myself started to change, and the fact that I was alone with me, I was okay with that. You know, it was more about solitude rather than loneliness all of a sudden. So I'd changed my experience of being alone. It wasn't being lonely. It was really enjoying that solitude with myself. And that included meditating, journaling, walking on my own, just reflection practices and contemplation.
Yep. So that's one category, is obviously the relationship to self. That needs to be looked after first.
Yeah, cool. So if you're in a relationship, then the second category that we've got here is time as a couple. So of course you're spending time with yourself, but you know, you need to, if you're in a romantic relationship, you got to spend time together. And I say that laughing, but the truth is, most of the time, relationships these days are individuals living under the one roof, and that's mostly the dynamic of what we see in our office. Two people that have lost their way, they kind of don't know who each other are. Yes, there is resentment between each other, and they don't spend time together as a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the type of time. You know, there's low quality time and there's high quality time, you know, like, because the low quality time, you might be, I'm spending time together. You know, that's just the day-to-day jobs in the house and just, you know, sorting out the kids or getting off to work, and you're still together. But no, we're talking about some focused quality time, whether that's, you know, sitting down and having a cup of tea and a conversation together without the distraction of anything else, or whether it's going out and having a picnic. But that's the time that we're talking about. So yeah, that's a really important space to dedicate time and energy. So number one is self, number two is each other.
Yeah, and I think you need to really have some parameters in that time together, because sometimes you can just hang out together but still be on your phone, still not be present with each other, still kind of doing your own thing but in a collective space. So, you know, even speaking about some parameters around what this is and how we're going to do it, because most of the time I think we can fall into unconscious traps, you know, which actually don't necessarily connect each other. And yeah, you can watch a movie together or something like that, and sometimes that's all you can really muster up if your energy is really low. But that also is a low frequency of connection time, because it's not really conversing. You're just really just hanging out next to each other on the couch, if you're just watching a movie. So yeah, just really framing what that is important.
And the third area of relationship that needs to be nurtured and dedicated space and time to is time as a family. You know, like, again, if you've got kids, if you don't have kids, obviously you don't need to worry about this one. But if you've got kids, then it's that quality time as a family. You know, that's really important, to fill that cup of, I see it as 5 cups, you know, 5 different cups that all need a little bit of nurturing and watering. So that, you know, cup number 1 is self, cup number 2 is, you know, your partner, cup number 3 is the family. So it's the same goes. How do we even just half a day or 2 hours or whatever you've got to dedicate to this space, because I know life's busy and the kids have got this on, they've got that on, but we keep kind of missing each other. So for that's a really important area to focus on as well.
Yeah, and once again, you've got to add a little bit of structuring here for most people, because if you don't, then let's just say oh, on the weekends generally we hang as a family, but you're out whippersnipping all day, and you're out kind of getting jobs done because they need to get done around the house, then you're not really spending time with family. You're in the vicinity of them, but you're not actually interacting with them. So can you dedicate half a Sunday where you guys just hang out together, and maybe you just, book a place to kind of go, or maybe just hang out in the lounge room or out in the backyard and get some jobs done together even.
So the fourth cup is time with mutual friends. Time with friends that, whether you're both friends with, and that might be going out to barbecues or going to lunch together, something like that, where all of you guys are together, and maybe that's with another family as well, and that would be time with mutual friends.
Yeah, right. So this is important because often your values cross over with your partner, and then hence they cross over with your friends and their friends. And so when you're connecting with people that are like-minded, that also gives a real sense of connectedness in yourself as well. So it's a whole nother angle of relationships when you can actually share friendships together with your partner. It's an area where sometimes we'll just skip that or miss it. Whereas other people are really social, and they just make a real, it doesn't even have to be an effort. It just sort of happens a bit more effortlessly. But when we're entrenched into our own daily and weekly lives, sometimes we can get into a rut and neglect this area. And this is definitely an area that we would like to get better in. Definitely in the back end of this year, just open up to more opportunities, especially on weekends, with friends.
I think that's a dying thing, isn't it, really? I remember as a kid, Mum and Dad always used to have friends over, or we'd always be going to their house, and there'd be different things on the weekends, barbecues or dinners, or we'd be going to the beach with another family even. But I feel like, again, this separation energy of that's your family, this is my family, we doing our own thing, is kind of creeping in. I don't know if that's just in general, but that's how I feel. I feel that there's this real separation because life's busy. Everybody seems to be on the hamster wheel, busy, and then the weekend comes and they've got no energy for anybody else except exhaustion. And I know that Mum and Dad were busy too, but there was always time for socialization with mutual friends. That was always there. So yeah, I'm kind of just reflecting on that now, because I know we do have good friends and we do catch up, but I don't think it's very often. And I think that to be a good friend and to teach the children how to be good friends and how to have good relationships with others is a really important skill. It's an important thing, because we get that they just follow us and they get kind of happy just chilling out at home doing their own thing. And I think that's something that needs a bit of intention behind it.
Yeah. So planting that seed for us right now in this moment, that we're looking to help foster more of that connectedness with our friends, which we have a lot of good, close, solid friends. But again, if you don't make the time to connect with them, then it's just not going to happen. So,
and that's important part of filling up that cup of connection and relationships, because I think sometimes that's all out of balance. You're my most important thing, and I'm just going to focus everything on you. And it's almost toxic. It's becomes too much. If it's a new relationship in particular, then you'll probably find everything else drops away and it's not important. But to have this healthy balance, to find that space within you that feels fulfilled without, neglecting anything is where all relationships are important. They're just as important as each other, not just this one that we're fostering, if it's a new relationship or even if you're kind of refocusing on your relationship yourselves.
Yeah, beautifully said. The final cup, the fifth cup, is time with your friends. So this is different from mutual friends. So I've got my friends, Amy's got hers. They don't necessarily all hang out together. So it's super important to have your own friendship circles or groups, even if it's just one friend, just a good friend that you can possibly have some banter with, maybe share some emotional connection with, maybe just venting about just the crappy week that you've had. Because if we're leaning on our romantic partner for everything, including emotional connection, and maybe we're getting home and we're venting, and also for humor, then perhaps that's a bit too much or heavily weighted towards them, and the pressure might be a little bit too much. So sometimes it's good to balance it out and to lean on others, to lean on other humans, and to in a reciprocal way receive from others as well, and be able to hold the space for them.
Yeah, absolutely. To be a good friend is actually quite challenging. I was listening to that podcast the other day, and that was talking about that, weren't they? But yeah, I think it's an art. It's an art to be a good friend. How can you really be there, for another person when they're most in need? Because it's a bit of a selfless act. And I to be honest, sometimes I find myself that I would do anything for my friends, but I find myself even in that space of like, oh, I'm too busy, I'm too tired, I'm too exhausted. But it's like, it's that conscious awareness of what it means. And I think we drop into just going back to this relationship, like the romantic relationship. It's an important part to recognize the codependency that sometimes you can foster within romantic relationships. You can almost become too dependent on each other, and I don't need anything else, I've just got you and you've just got me, and if you've got family and kids, then that becomes kind of part of that codependency, then nothing else matters. But I feel like we're all about thriving relationships, and to have thriving relationships includes all areas of relationships, not just this little network. And I think a lot of couples and clients that we've worked with in the past, there's one partner or both partners are actually, I don't really have many friends. I don't really socialize. I don't really like getting on with other people, but I think there's a part of that human desire or human instinct to connect with different people that make you feel more alive and make you feel more balanced and
more you.
Yeah, expressed you.
Yeah, so just on that, because this is the last category, just right now, just think of the top 3 influences in your life currently, and we're talking about just friends and people that you're closely connected with. Do they improve your energy, as in lift you up and help you to feel better in yourself? Or do they actually take away from your life force energy inside? Do they actually detract, from your best, most optimal place to sit in? And it's worth doing that, because sometimes the people that we're friends with are not necessarily healthy for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good reflection, because it's often also reciprocated on the relationship you have with your partner. Because if your friends are toxic and your relationship potentially is toxic, then that feeds that, because that feeds that separation of distancing between the two of you. So just be aware and conscious of the type of environment that you're in, and the environment that is influencing you, and who you are and how you show up. And if that doesn't feel in alignment with your true self, then maybe looking at some questions of, might be time to explore new friendship groups. Get out there and meet new people and see if there is people who are more in alignment with you and your goals and your values.
So let's just reflect on the top 5 cups that we put together for you, because so many people in this world are experiencing loneliness and isolation, even if they're in relationships. So let's go through the 5 categories. Number 1 is always connection with self. Yeah, so time with self for reflection, contemplation. That could be any modality. It could just be just being. The second one is time as a couple. So time together with your romantic partner, actually dedicated, devices away, just so that you can develop and water your intimacy. Third one is time as a family. Wholesome time, away from technology if possible. The fourth one is time with mutual friends, where you have shared friends together, actually experiencing that connectedness with other families or other people. And the fifth one is time with your own friends, for connection in a different way. So hopefully you've got something out of those categories. What I challenge you to do is to have a look at which areas you're neglecting and which areas you're doing mighty fine in, which areas are you actually kind of naturally dropping into without even thinking of it. Because it's the areas that you're neglecting that are likely to be contributing to some level of suffering in your life.
Unhappiness, yeah. Yeah, and I think, I was just reflecting there of like, there's potential for all of these areas to be triggers for some couples. There could be different triggers in jealousy issues, triggers in differences in friendship groups, and there's a lot that could cause disruption and friction in this area. So if that is you and you're struggling to kind of like, I can't, there's no way that I could potentially do that. Like if my wife doesn't trust me to go and hang out with my mates because of an incident or something. So there's obviously work or attention needed in the relationship to heal that pain or that suffering. So that's obviously where we can come in and help to get to that, because true thriving in a relationship and true happiness in the self is, we believe it's important to have a balance in all of those different areas that we talked about, all those different relationships.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks again for all your wonderful comments. And we run these every fortnight, so if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Check us out on Instagram. It's Michael and Amy, or Thriving Relationships podcast, and add us on Facebook. We do share a lot of content, and we look forward to sharing a lot more with you. And with all that being said, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.